With New Year's resolutions, many of us will make a vow to eat healthier, and that's a good thing. But what about our beloved pets and their nutrition? Greetings, Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm on a mission to provide better nutrition for cats and dogs because truthfully, all pet food is dead food, which is why we created Rough Greens and Meow Greens in the first place. We bring their food back to life with live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. All in a tasty formula that your dog and cat will love. You can improve your pet's coat, digestion, energy, and have less vet bills. Let 2025 bring a new year and a new pet. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20. Get a 100% discount with promo code BESTFRIEND. You just cover the shipping. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code BESTFRIEND. Bring your pet's food back to life with Rough Greens. So good, your pet will ask for it by name.
This is SpaceTime, Series 28, Episode 5, for broadcast on the 10th of January 2025. Coming up on SpaceTime, volcanic activity on the red planet Mars, the mysteries of Supernova 1987A, and the launch of the new Dream Chaser spaceplane delayed until May. All that and more coming up on SpaceTime.
Welcome to SpaceTime with Stuart Gary.
A new study claims there's evidence for recent volcanic activity on the red planet Mars. The research shows eruptions could have taken place across Mars within the last 50,000 years, which in geological terms is present day. The new findings, reported in the journal Icarus, are based on satellite observations showing geologically recent explosive volcanism in Elysium Planitia, which would be the youngest known volcanic eruption on Mars. Most volcanism on the red planet occurred between 3 and 4 billion years ago, with smaller eruptions in isolated locations continuing perhaps as recently as 3 million years ago. But until now, there's been no evidence to indicate whether or not Mars could still be volcanically active today. The study's lead author, David Horvath from the Planetary Science Institute, says the newly discovered feature is a mysterious dark deposit covering an area slightly larger than Washington, D.C. He says it has high thermal inertia, includes high calcium pyroxene-rich material, and is distributed symmetrically around a segment of the Cerebos Fossi fissure system in Elysium Planitia, typical of aeolian or wind-driven deposits in the region. Horvath says the feature looks similar to dark spots on both the Moon and Mercury, suggested to be explosive volcanic eruptions. He says it may in fact be the youngest volcanic deposit yet documented on Mars. While there are numerous examples of explosive volcanism on the red planet, the majority of Martian volcanism consists of lava flowing at the surface. However, this Elysium Planitia deposit appears to be different. The feature overlies the surrounding lava flows and appears to be a relatively fresh deposit of ash and rock, representing a different style and time period of eruption than previously identified pyroclastic features. The eruption could have spewed ash as high as 10 kilometers into the Martian atmosphere. Horvath says Elysium Planitia hosts some of the youngest volcanism on Mars, dating back around 3 million years ago, so it's not entirely unexpected. He says it's possible these sorts of deposits were more common once, but have mostly been eroded or buried. The site of the eruption is about 1,600 kilometers from NASA's Mars InSight lander, which was studying tectonic activity on Mars following its landing in 2018. In fact, before it ended its mission, InSight detected 2 Mars quakes which were localized to the region of Cerebos Fossi, and recent work suggested the possibility that these could have been due to the movement of magma at depth. The young age of the deposit absolutely raises the possibility that there could still be volcanic activity on Mars today, and it's intriguing that recent Mars quakes detected by InSight were all sourced in the same region. However, sustaining magma near the surface of Mars so late in Martian history with no associated lava flows would be difficult, and so deeper magmatic sources would probably have been needed to create this eruption. Horvath says volcanic deposits such as this would also raise the possibility for habitable conditions near the surface of Mars in recent history. In fact, the interaction between ascending magma and icy substrates in this region could have provided favourable conditions for microbial life fairly recently, and so even raises the possibility of existent life in this region. A fascinating concept. This is Space Time. Still to come, the mysteries of Supernova 1987A and the launch of the Dream Chaser spaceplane, now likely to take place in May. All that and more still to come on Space Time. Astronomers using the Murchison Wide Field Array radio telescope in outback Western Australia have been peering deep into the heart of Supernova 1987A, trying to understand more about the progenitor star that triggered the most powerful explosion in our part of the universe in the last 400 years. Supernova 1987A marked the explosive death of a spectral type B3 blue supergiant star called Sanderlick -69202 on the outskirts of the Tarantula Nebula, some 168,000 light-years away in the Large Magellanic Cloud, a dwarf galaxy orbiting our own galaxy, the Milky Way. The progenitor star is estimated to have been around 20 times more massive than our Sun. Light from the supernova event reached the Earth in February 1987, making it the closest observed supernova since the invention of the telescope and Kepler's supernova, which was visible from Earth in 1604. It gave modern astronomers the opportunity to study a core collapse Type II supernova in unprecedented detail, gleaning many new insights into stellar evolution. Now, based on the mass of the progenitor star, SN 1987A should have produced a superdense compact stellar corpse called a neutron star. And the neutrino data suggests that a compact object did form in the star's core. However, astronomers weren't able to confirm its existence until 2019 because it lay hidden, concealed in a thick cloud of cosmic dust. The supernova explosion that took place at the end of the star's life resulted in huge amounts of gas with temperatures of over 1,000,000 degrees. But as the gas began to cool down, some of it condensed into dust grains. The presence of this thick cloud of dust has long been the main explanation as to why the missing neutron star hadn't been observed earlier. But many astronomers were skeptical about this, and they began to question whether their understanding of the star's life was correct. And so this new research is painting a picture of the star's life long before its death. Much had been known about the immediate past of the star simply by studying the cosmic ruins resulting from the star's collapse. However, the detection of very faint low-frequency energy by Murchison has provided new insights. Previously, only a final fraction of the dead star's multi-million-year life, about 1% or 20,000 years, had been observable. The Murchison observations by Joseph Cullingham from the University of Sydney probed the supernova's past life millions of years further back than what was previously possible. Those findings, reported in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society, focused on material that was ejected into space when the star was in its final blue supergiant phase. Cullingham says that just like excavating and studying ancient ruins that teach archaeologists about the life of past civilizations, Murchison's low-frequency radio observations have provided a window into the star's past life.
So we've been looking at 1987A at really low radio frequencies, so essentially frequencies you tune your FM radio to, so like 105 megahertz or something like that. And in particular, what we're interested in is the phase of the star's life before it went supernova. And so, in particular, my study was very sensitive to the star when it's what's called its red supergiant phase. And that's this phase that our sun will actually kind of go through, where essentially it's run out of hydrogen in its core and it's moved to helium burning in its core, and the outer layers expand up and become red and fluffy and cooler.
And how did you do this work? You used the Murchison Wide Field Array. That's a different type of radio telescope, isn't it?
Yeah, so the Murchison Wide Field Array is based out in Western Australia, in the Murchison Shire, funnily enough. It works, as I said, really low radio frequency, so essentially sensitive between 72 and 230 megahertz. This is a precursor to what's called the Square Kilometre Array, so essentially a big radio telescope designed to kind of test the engineering and the science capabilities of that, so as a precursor instrument.
And it looks at a specific bandwidth in the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah, so as I said, 72 to 230 megahertz, picking up essentially the frequencies that I'm sensitive to in the Murchison Wide Field Array. But instead of spending all this money to build essentially something that's sensitive just to radio, we build it really far away from people to get away from interference. And so we're sensitive to astronomical objects, and just one of them happens to be 1987A.
And 1987A is an amazing supernova. It was one that sparked my interest in astronomy. It's a bit unusual for most supernovae because of the way it's evolved.
Yeah, so it's the closest and brightest supernova to occur since the invention of the telescope, which is kind of amazing to think about. So you can essentially take the telescope was first pointed to the skies by Galileo in about 1600. So not to have a supernova go off except 1987A is pretty crazy, and it just goes to show how important this object is to our understanding of how massive stars and their lives. What we know about the progenitor is it's kind of odder than we ever thought or ever predicted. So the star that actually did go into supernova, all our theories kind of predicted you'd be like if you're about 5 times more massive than the sun, you'll go through kind of a sun-like phase, and then you'd enter this what's called the red supergiant phase, and then you'd eventually supernova. But what we found by looking at archival information of the galaxy at which 87A exploded in, called the Large Magellanic Cloud, we realized that the star actually went through a blue supergiant phase before it exploded, which is kind of odd. We never expected that at all. So why and how are questions that we've been trying to answer.
Red and blue, that's got a lot to do with the temperature of the star itself.
Yes. So red of the star, I know it's kind of funny because in everyday life, we usually mean red to be warm or hot. But for a star, red is actually as cold as you pretty much get. Red is quite a cool star, while blue represents hot. And so your listeners might remember from high school the Bunsen burner. And in particular, they might remember the red safety flame. But if you wanted to use a Bunsen burner, you always turned it on, and the hottest part of the flame was always the blue part of the flame. And this has got to do with black body radiation, but it's not important exactly what it is. It's just the bluer, the hotter, and redder, the cooler. Kind of counterintuitive what we're kind of taught and what we use in everyday language. We're not quite sure why it went through a blue supergiant phase, and so it's quite hard to figure out and exactly why we saw a blue supergiant before it collapsed. So some thoughts have been maybe it was a binary star system. So there's 2 stars that exist in the system, and one evolved to a red supergiant star. And there might have been something like the sun next to it, and for some reason they merged, they fused together, and in that process, that's quite violent. And that caused it to heat back up and go into this blue supergiant phase. But it's possible that's maybe not the case at all. Maybe it went through a really weird mass loss scenario. So the star, for some particular reason, lost heaps and heaps and heaps of mass. And so it spewed out and it became blue supergiant again. It was all very odd, and we never expected that at all. And so I can't really tell you the final answer, the reason why it entered the blue supergiant phase, but we know it did. And so we have to change our theories to understand that.
Because 1987A has such a weird hourglass shape, it's not an expanded spherical type shape, could that be telling us something?
Yeah, so the morphology of the supernova remnant is even odd for us, right? So again, we kind of think most supernovae would be roughly spherical, right? You explode a star, it should go out equally in all directions. But for supernova 1987A, as you said, we see this hourglass shape. So it seems tighter at the waist, and then it kind of expands in these 2 rings at the ends. And so people hypothesize maybe that's why, maybe it had to be a binary, right? For example, the binary merged on the equator, and so that's why you have a tight waist, and a lot of the mass loss occurred at the poles. But you also can get that shape if you have a really fast spinning star, a star that's spinning really quickly, and you get a lot of the ejection from the poles rather than the equator. And so a lot from the equator as well, from the poles. So it's a very odd shape, and just goes to show 87A, even though it went off years ago, is still revolutionizing our way we understand about massive stars and their lives and how supernovae occur.
A spin-up caused by an increase in mass by 2 stars merging sounds feasible, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a possibility, and there's been simulations here, and it's one of those questions I don't know if we'll ever know the answer to. We can get close, and there's good suggestions for one or the other, but I don't know if we'll ever know the exact true answer there. What exactly caused it to go to a blue supergiant phase?
That's Joseph Callingham from the University of Sydney. And this is Space Time. Still to come, the Dream Chaser spaceplane launched delayed until at least May, and later in the Science Report, scientists in Russia have discovered the world-preserved remains of a baby mammoth. All that and more still to come on Space Time.
With New Year's resolutions, many of us will make a vow to eat healthier, and that's a good thing. But what about our beloved pets and their nutrition? Greetings, naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm on a mission to provide better nutrition for cats and dogs because truthfully, all pet food is dead food, which is why we created Rough Greens and Meow Greens in the first place. We bring their food back to life with live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. All in a tasty formula that your dog and cat will love. You can improve your pet's coat, digestion, energy, and have less vet bills. Let 2025 bring a new year and a new pet. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20. Get a 100% discount with promo code BESTFRIEND. You just cover the shipping. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code BESTFRIEND. Bring your pet's food back to life with Rough Greens. So good, your pet will ask for it by name.
The long-awaited inaugural flight of Sierra Space's Dream Chaser spaceplane is now expected to take place in May. The spacecraft Tenacity, along with its Shooting Star cargo module, have been unveiled at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida after completing a vigorous vibration and thermal vacuum testing program at the Neil Armstrong facility in Ohio. The public viewing followed the completion of successful electromagnetic interference and compatibility testing at Kennedy. Work's also now completed on the spacecraft's thermal protection system and final payload integration. The maiden flight will send Tenacity and its Shooting Star cargo module carrying over 3.5 tons of food, supplies and scientific equipment to the International Space Station aboard a United Launch Alliance Vulcan Centaur rocket from Space Launch Complex 41 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. As part of the process to certify the vehicle system for future agency resupply missions, NASA and Sierra Space will put the spaceplane through its paces once in orbit. As Dream Chaser Tenacity approaches the space station, it'll conduct a series of demonstrations to prove attitude control, transitional maneuvers, and abort capabilities. After completing the maneuverability demonstration, the space station's crew will use the Canadarm2 robotic arm to grapple the spacecraft and dock it to an Earth-facing port on the Harmony module. After remaining docked to the orbiting outpost for around 45 days, Tenacity will be released from the space station and returned to Earth, landing conventionally on the former Kennedy Space Center space shuttle runway, carrying 1,750 kilograms of returned experiments and equipment. Sierra Space says the gentler runway landing will allow the return to Earth of more delicate equipment and experiments, which could be damaged by a rougher high-G capsule splashdown. After landing, Dream Chaser will be powered down, and the Sierra Space team will transfer it back to the processing facility in order to perform the necessary inspections, offload the remaining NASA cargo, and begin the process of preparing it for its next mission. Meanwhile, the Shooting Star cargo module will remain docked to the space station until it's filled with trash. It'll then be released to return to Earth, burning up in the atmosphere. Sierra Space is also moving forward with the development of its second Dream Chaser spaceplane, this one to be called Reverence. It's about 18 months away from completion. The company's Senior Vice President for Mission Assurance, Angie Wise, says that each 12-metre-long Dream Chaser winged spaceplane is designed for around 15 flights over a 10-year lifespan. That will allow the pair to provide up to 30 missions to orbit, including at least 7 contracted to NASA under its commercial resupply service contract. Future missions may last as long as 75 days and deliver over 5.2 tons of cargo on each flight. NASA awarded Dream Chaser its Space Station Commercial Resupply Program contract alongside their existing SpaceX Dragon and Orbital Now Northrop Grumman Cygnus cargo ship contracts. Sierra Space is also planning to use Dream Chaser to launch and build its own orbiting habitat in space before NASA retires the International Space Station in 2030. The 5-metre-long Shooting Star module, which is attached to the rear of Dream Chaser, can carry up to 3 tons of cargo internally and also features 3 unpressurised external payload mounts. Sierra Space is also moving ahead with its plans to develop a free-flying cargo satellite based on the Shooting Star module to house orbital military payloads. While the reusable Tenacity and Reverence are both designed to carry cargo only, the company is continuing to work on both the manned version of Dream Chaser and a variant specifically designed for national security missions. Although NASA are only using it for cargo transport, the winged Dream Chaser lifting body spaceplane was originally designed to transport up to 7 people on crew transfer missions to the International Space Station, but lost out to SpaceX's Dragon and the trouble-plagued Boeing CST-100 Starliner in NASA's commercial crew transport contracts. SpaceX began flying astronauts on Dragon to the space station in 2019. And although Starliner has flown 1 crew to the space station, It proved to be unreliable, and that crew's still up there, stuck waiting for a return ride on, you guessed it, a Dragon. Considering all the problems NASA are having with Starliner, one wonders whether they regret not giving the second manned transport contract to Dream Chaser instead. The Dream Chaser design itself goes back more than 60 years, with its origins in the United States Air Force 1957X-20 Dinosaur spacecraft, which would have been launched on top of a modified Titan III rocket. NASA continued its development in the 1960s and early 70s with a range of experimental spacecraft, including the Northrop M2, the Martin X-23 Prime, the Martin Marietta X-24, and the Northrop HL-10 lifting bodies. And during the 1990s, NASA used the same basic design to develop the HL-20 experimental spaceplane, which eventually evolved into the X-38 emergency crew return vehicle, which would have been an emergency escape pod transported to the space station in the payload bay of the space shuttle. It then would have remained docked to the orbiting outpost until needed. However, that project was cancelled in 2002 following federal government budget cuts. This is SpaceTime.
With New Year's resolutions, many of us will make a vow to eat healthier, and that's a good thing. But what about our beloved pets and their nutrition? Greetings, Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm on a mission to provide better nutrition for cats and dogs because truthfully, all pet food is dead food, which is why we created Rough Greens and Meow Greens in the first place. We bring their food back to life with live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. All in a tasty formula that your dog and cat will love. You can improve your pet's coat, digestion, energy, and have less vet bills. Let 2025 bring a new year and a new pet. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20. Get a 100% discount with promo code BESTFRIEND. You just cover the shipping. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code BESTFRIEND. Bring your pet's food back to life with Rough Greens. So good, your pet will ask for it by name.
And time now to take another brief look at some of the other stories making news in science this week with the Science Report. Canadian scientists have compared the prevalence and risk of mental disorders, substance use disorders and suicidal behaviours between trans and gender-diverse people and their cisgender counterparts. The study, reported in the Journal of the American Medical Association, included nearly 10,000 people, around half of whom were identified as trans or gender-diverse. The risk of mental disorders, substance use disorders and suicidal behaviours was found to be higher amongst trans and gender-diverse people, especially when it came to either having a plan for suicide or having attempted suicide. The authors suggest the increased risks may be due, at least in part, to experiencing prejudice and harassment throughout life. A new study has found that the best way to deal with narcissistic people is to simply get them out of your life and avoid them as quickly as possible. The findings are based on more than 20 years of study by researchers at Ohio State University. However, the authors admit that advice may often be difficult to take because narcissists can be very charming and likable, especially during the early stages of a relationship. However, there are usually subtle signs that you should not ignore, such as a lack of empathy, the need for constant attention and admiration, taking advantage of others, and expectations for special favours without any reciprocation. The authors recognise different types of narcissism, all of which have core characteristics of entitlement, self-centeredness, and a lack of empathy for others. The most recognisable type to most people might be agentic grandiose narcissism, which is characterised by high self-esteem, extroversion, arrogance, and dominance. The authors also found that narcissistic bosses are often aggressive and bullying, taking credit for their employees' hard work and dominating resources that are often needed by others to do their jobs. Scientists have placed on display the remarkably well-preserved baby mammoth found in a remote permafrost-covered region bordering the Arctic Ocean. The 50,000-year-old female has been named Jana after the river in whose basin it was discovered last year. Scientists say Jana is the best-preserved mammoth carcass in the world, and is one of only 7 whole remains ever found. She is thought to have been about 12 months old at the time of her death. She weighs around 180 kilograms and is 120 centimetres tall, 200 centimetres long. Before this discovery, only 6 mammoth carcasses had ever been found, 5 in Russia and 1 in Canada. Phoenix, Arizona has been named as America's top location for UFO sightings. It narrowly edged out New York City, Nevada to grab the top spot with a whopping 323 sightings over the last decade. New York City reported 313 sightings, while Nevada, home to the infamous Area 51, had 309 sightings. The rankings were compiled by Bettis using data from the National UFO Reporting Center. Phoenix was always likely to be the favourite, following the famous Phoenix Light incident back in March 1997, when flares dropped by aircraft during Air Force training exercises were taken to be lights from a giant V-shaped flying alien spacecraft. Nevada got the nod because it's home to the Area 51 test range and the Nellis Air Force Base on Groom Lake, which has long been used to test classified aircraft. Amazingly, beaten out of the top spots was long-time former favourite Roswell, New Mexico, the location near where it's claimed an alien spacecraft crashed in 1947 and its occupants then captured for an alien autopsy. The Pew Research Center claims around 65% of Americans believe intelligent life exists on other planets. Tim Mendham from Australian Skeptic says the survey shows it's not just location that matters, but also timing's important too if you want to see flying saucers.
Well, you want to know, it's Phoenix, Arizona, and that's not necessarily the place that comes instantly to mind, but Phoenix, Arizona apparently has what's described as a whopping 323 sightings in the last decade, which is one every 10 days, something like that. So, very impressive place. If you want to go and see UFOs, go to Phoenix, Arizona and spend 10, 20 days there.
It's not far
looking
from
up
Area 51.
Well, Nevada is number 3. Number 2 is New York. Number 3 is Nevada, and it moves on from there. It tends to be places, not so much Nevada perhaps, but tend to be places with a decent population. So you get enough people up there looking at the sky, so you're going to get more reports. You're not going to get a lot of reports from the middle of the Sonora Desert or the Sahara or something where there's fewer people there. So yeah, the more people you have, like New York, the more likely you are to get sightings. So
Phoenix came to fame over the Phoenix Lights.
That's right, yeah.
It was a V-shaped series of lights that flew over the city. The Air Force originally denied any knowledge of it. They later admitted they were releasing a series of marker lights.
Right, that's the thing. Phoenix Lights, yeah, that was a big thing. All these sightings over a decade, impressive. They actually say that if you're going to go to Phoenix, you have to go to a certain time of year. New York, Colorado, you want to go to, I think it's middle of the year, between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. California and Arizona, I think it's towards the end of the year. Don't know why that is, why UFOs would fly at certain times of the year in certain places in the year. It might be a place where people are in the mood to see these things, and because you build up all this excitement that everyone who sees something strange suddenly thinks it's an alien craft, whereas in the middle of somewhere else where they don't see them, I think, oh no, that's just an asteroid or a meteor or a flight of birds or a balloon or something. So I would say some people, some areas have a greater proclivity to see things, not because there are more things, but because they just tend to see them.
That's Tim Mendham from Australian Skeptics. That's the show for now. SpaceTime is available every Monday, Wednesday and Friday through Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcast, Pocket Casts, Spotify, Acast, Amazon Music, Bytes.com, SoundCloud, YouTube, your favourite podcast download provider, and from spacetimewithstuartgary.com. SpaceTime's also broadcast through the National Science Foundation on Science Zone Radio and on both iHeartRadio and TuneIn Radio. And you can help to support our show by visiting the SpaceTime store for a range of promotional merchandising goodies, or by becoming a SpaceTime patron, which gives you access to triple-episode commercial-free versions of the show, as well as lots of bonus audio content which doesn't go to air, access to our exclusive Facebook group, and other rewards. Just go to spacetimewithstuartgary.com for full details.
You've been listening to SpaceTime with Stuart Gary. This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.
With New Year's resolutions, many of us will make a vow to eat healthier, and that's a good thing. But what about our beloved pets and their nutrition? Greetings, naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm on a mission to provide better nutrition for cats and dogs because truthfully, all pet food is dead food, which is why we created Rough Greens and Meow Greens in the first place. We bring their food back to life with live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. all in a tasty formula that your dog and cat will love. You can improve your pet's coat, digestion, energy, and have less vet bills. Let 2025 bring a new year and a new pet. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20. Get a 100% discount with promo code BESTFRIEND. You just cover the shipping. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code BESTFRIEND. Bring your pet's food back to life with Rough Greens. So good, your pet will ask for it by name.